The champagne glass trembled in my hand as I watched my husband of 8 years, James Bourne, laugh with his executive team at the VIP table. The table I was explicitly told not to approach tonight. "Darling, you understand how these corporate events work," he had said this morning while adjusting his custom Armani tie. "The investors need to see a united executive front. You'll be more comfortable at table 7 with the other spouses." What James didn't know, what none of them knew, was that as of 9 a.m. this morning, I owned 51% of Quantum Innovations. The company my husband had dedicated his life to. The company that had slowly stolen him away from me. The company I had just purchased through a series of shell corporations and blind trusts. Hello beautiful people. Welcome back to my channel. I hope you're watching from somewhere comfortable because tonight's story is going to take you on an emotional rollercoaster you won't want to step off. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now because trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next in this tale of power, betrayal, and sweet, sweet justice. Where are you watching from tonight? Drop it in the comments below. I took another sip of champagne, the bubbles burning my throat as I watched James charm the table. 8 years of marriage, and he still had no idea who I really was. Before I met him, I was Olivia Stark, the quiet financial prodigy who had built and sold 3 companies before turning 30. When we married, I became Olivia Bourne, the supportive wife who stood in his shadow. "Are you all right, dear?" asked an older woman at my table. "You've barely touched your appetizer." I forced a smile. Just taking in the spectacle. The annual Quantum Innovations Gala was indeed spectacular, crystal chandeliers, ice sculptures, and San Francisco's elite mingling in their finest. The perfect setting for what I had planned. My phone vibrated with a text from Ellie Ripley, my attorney. "Everything's in place. Board notification goes out at 9:30 p.m. Are you sure about this?" I glanced at my watch. 20 minutes until my husband's world imploded. 20 minutes until everyone in this room realized who really held the power. James caught my eye across the room and raised his glass with a practiced smile that didn't reach his eyes. The same smile he'd given me last month when I asked why he'd missed our anniversary dinner. "Company emergency," he'd claimed, though the lipstick on his collar told a different story. What would he do when he discovered that his wife, the woman he'd relegated to table 7, now controlled his precious company? The woman he'd been systematically betraying for years? I stood up, smoothed down my crimson gown, and began walking toward the VIP table. The question wasn't whether I would destroy my husband tonight. The question was how much of himself would be left when I was done. I wasn't always this calculating. 3 years ago, I was still the woman who believed in our love story, the brilliant executive who fell for the quiet financial analyst during a company merger. I was the woman who gave up her own ambitions to support his, who moved across the country when his career demanded it, who smiled through lonely nights and empty promises. "Mrs. Bourne, you can't go to that table," a young event coordinator whispered urgently, stepping into my path. Mr. Bourne left specific instructions. I smiled at her, the same placid smile I perfected over years of corporate wives' luncheons. "It's all right. I just need a quick word with my husband." My greatest fear had always been insignificance, disappearing into someone else's shadow until nothing remained of me. It was why I'd worked so hard in my 20s, building companies from nothing, proving my worth in numbers that couldn't be denied. Then I met James, and for a while, I believed I could be significant to just one person instead of the world. How wrong I'd been. As I approached the VIP table, I caught snippets of their conversation, stock projections, the upcoming merger with East Asian markets, the board meeting next week that would change everything. They had no idea how right they were about that last part. "Olivia." James's voice cut through the chatter as he noticed me. His smile remained, but his eyes hardened. "Is everything all right at your table?" "Everything's perfect," I replied, my voice steady despite the hammering in my chest. "I just thought I'd say hello to everyone." The table fell awkwardly silent. These men had worked with my husband for years, yet most barely knew my name. To them, I was just James's pretty, quiet wife, the accessory he'd acquired along with his executive title and Maserati. Only Theodore Keating, the aging CFO, stood to greet me. "Olivia, lovely as always. That color is stunning on you." "Thank you, Theo." I'd always liked him, the only one who treated me as a person rather than an extension of my husband. How's Margaret's fundraiser coming along? Spectacularly, thanks to your donation. She was thrilled. James cleared his throat. Darling, we're just discussing some sensitive company matters. Perhaps you could. Actually, I interrupted, something I never did. I'd love to hear about these sensitive matters. The East Asian merger sounds fascinating. The table exchanged glances. James's jaw tightened as he stood, taking my elbow. Let me walk you back to your table. As he guided me away, his fingers dug into my skin. What are you doing? He hissed. You know these discussions are confidential. Are they confidential from your wife, or just from me specifically? I asked, maintaining my smile for anyone watching. Don't start this here, he warned. You know how important tonight is. I did know. Tonight was supposed to be James's triumph, the night he announced preliminary approval for the merger he'd been orchestrating for months. The merger that would cement his legacy and likely earn him the CEO position when old Richardson retired next year. The merger that, as of this morning, required my approval to proceed. You're right, I conceded, checking my watch again. 15 minutes until the board notification. Tonight is important. More important than you know. He relaxed slightly, mistaking my words for submission. I'll make it up to you later, he promised, the same empty words he'd been offering for years. Just let me handle this my way. As he turned to leave, I caught his arm. James, when was the last time you really looked at me? I mean, really saw me? Confusion flickered across his face. What are you talking about? Nothing, I said, releasing him. Go back to your table. Enjoy your moment. As I watched him return to his seat, I thought about the exact moment I decided to take back my power. It wasn't when I found the text messages from his assistant Veronica. It wasn't when he missed our anniversary for the second year running. It wasn't even when I overheard him telling his friend that I was simple but convenient. It was 3 months ago, when I realized I no longer recognized myself in the mirror. The woman staring back at me wasn't Olivia Stark or even Olivia Bourne. She was nobody at all. That night, I made a call to my old business partner, Ryan Skywalker. I need to come back, I told him. And I need a project that will remind me who I am. Ryan didn't ask questions. He just said, I know exactly what you need, and sent me the confidential prospectus for Quantum Innovations, a company looking for silent investors due to cash flow problems they were desperately hiding from their employees and the public. My husband's company. My phone vibrated again. Another text from Ellie, board email queued. Last chance to back out. I typed back, proceed as planned. 10 minutes until everyone in this room discovered who I really was. I returned to table 7, where the spouses of executives discussed vacation homes and private schools with practiced enthusiasm. None of them knew me, not really. I'd kept to myself during the 3 years we'd lived in San Francisco, finding it easier to be a ghost than to build connections I'd inevitably lose when James's next promotion took us elsewhere. Olivia, isn't your anniversary coming up? Asked Catherine, wife of the marketing VP. Any special plans? Before I could answer, the lights dimmed and a spotlight illuminated the small stage at the front of the ballroom. Richardson Callahan, the 68-year-old CEO of Quantum Innovations, tapped the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for our annual gala. His voice boomed through the speakers. Quantum Innovations has had a remarkable year, and we have much to celebrate. I checked my watch. 5 minutes until the board notification. My phone buzzed with an incoming call, Ryan. I slipped away from the table and answered in a hushed voice. Everything okay? I asked. More than okay, Ryan replied. The transfer is complete. You now officially own controlling interest in Quantum Innovations. Congratulations, Liv. You're back in the game. A strange calm washed over me. Thank you for making this happen. Are you sure about the timing? We could have done this more privately. I watched James at the VIP table, laughing at something Richardson said, completely unaware of what was coming. No. This needs to happen exactly as planned. On stage, Richardson was introducing the executive team, calling them up one by one to thunderous applause. When James's name was announced, the room erupted. He was the golden boy, the visionary who had pushed for the East Asian merger that would supposedly double their market cap. And now, Richardson continued, I'd like to invite James Bourne to share some exciting developments regarding our expansion into East Asian markets. James approached the podium with the confidence of a man who believed he owned the world. I used to admire that confidence. Now I recognized it for what it was, entitlement. Thank you, Richardson, James began. As many of you know, we've been working tirelessly on this merger for the past 18 months. Tonight, I'm thrilled to announce that we've received preliminary approval from all major stakeholders. The room applauded. James raised his hand for silence, his smile widening. This merger represents not just growth for Quantum, but a complete transformation of our business model. By this time next year, we project a 200% increase in. The double doors at the back of the ballroom burst open. Ellie Ripley strode in, flanked by two men in suits. The room fell silent as all heads turned. I apologize for the interruption, Ellie announced, her voice carrying across the stunned room. I'm Ellie Ripley, legal counsel for Stark Holdings. I have an urgent matter to address with the board and executives of Quantum Innovations. James's face contorted in confusion, then annoyance. I'm sorry, but we're in the middle of an important announcement. Whatever this is can wait until Monday. Ellie smiled thinly. I'm afraid it cannot wait, Mr. Bourne. As of 9 a.m. this morning, ownership of Quantum Innovations has changed hands. The board has just been notified electronically, but given the significance of tonight's event, my client felt an in-person announcement was appropriate. The room erupted in murmurs. Richardson stepped forward, his face ashen. What is the meaning of this? Who is your client? This was my moment. I stood up, my crimson dress a splash of blood against the sea of black tuxedos and conservative gowns. I said, my voice clear and steady. Every head turned toward me. James's eyes widened in disbelief, then narrowed in confusion. Olivia, he said, as if seeing a stranger wearing his wife's face. I walked toward the stage, the crowd parting before me like the Red Sea. The confidence I'd buried for years resurfaced with each step. Stark Holdings has acquired 51% of Quantum Innovations shares, I announced, taking the microphone from a stunned Richardson. For those who don't know me, my name is Olivia Stark Bourne. Before I was James's wife, I built and sold 3 successful tech companies. And now, I'm the majority owner of Quantum Innovations. The silence in the room was absolute. I could see the executives at the VIP table exchanging panicked glances. James stood frozen, his face cycling through shock, confusion, and the first hints of anger. This is absurd, he finally sputtered. There must be some mistake. No mistake, Ellie confirmed, handing folders to Richardson and the other board members. The transaction was completed legally this morning. All documentation is in order. I turned to face the crowd, feeling more alive than I had in years. I want to assure everyone that this transition will be smooth. All current projects will continue as planned, with one exception. My eyes locked with James's. The East Asian merger will be placed under comprehensive review, effective immediately. The project he'd staked his reputation on. The deal that was supposed to earn him the CEO chair. I watched the realization dawn on his face, his career now rested in my hands. This is a joke, he said, his voice rising. Olivia doesn't know the first thing about running a tech company. She's just my... You're what, James? I challenged, stepping closer. Your wife? The woman who gave up her own career to support yours? The woman you've been cheating on with your assistant for the past year. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Veronica, seated at a distant table, turned scarlet and stared at her plate. Or perhaps you were going to say just a housewife. I continued. The woman you relegated to table 7 tonight because you were embarrassed by her? The woman you thought was too simple to notice your lies. James's face drained of color. Olivia, you're making a scene. We should discuss this privately. Like you discussed the lipstick on your collar privately. Or the hotel charges on our joint credit card. Or perhaps how you discuss me with your friends when you thought I couldn't hear. The room had become uncomfortably quiet. I could feel hundreds of eyes on us, witnessing the implosion of what they'd thought was a perfect marriage. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, addressing the crowd again, I apologize for the drama. This was not how I planned to announce my acquisition. Please, enjoy the rest of your evening. There will be a formal press release on Monday detailing the changes in leadership. I handed the microphone back to Richardson, who looked like he might faint. As I turned to leave the stage, James grabbed my arm. You can't do this, he hissed. You have no idea what you're doing. I looked down at his hand on my arm, then back up at his face, the face I'd once loved more than anything in the world. That's where you're wrong, James, I said quietly. I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm taking back what's mine. My company. My power. My life. I pulled free of his grasp and walked away, feeling the weight of the room's stairs on my back. The night had only just begun, and already nothing would ever be the same. The next hour passed in a blur of whispers and stares. I stationed myself at the bar, nursing a glass of scotch, James's drink, not mine, but tonight called for something stronger than champagne. From my vantage point, I watched the fallout unfold like a slow-motion car crash. The board members huddled in a corner with their legal counsel, frantically reviewing the documents Ellie had provided. James paced near the exit, alternating between furious phone calls and heated conversations with his executive team. Occasionally, his eyes would find mine across the room, filled with a mixture of rage and disbelief that sent a chill down my spine. That was quite an entrance, said a voice beside me. I turned to find Theodore Keating sliding onto the bar stool next to mine. I didn't plan it that way, I admitted. Ellie has a flair for the dramatic. Theo ordered a whiskey, then studied me with new eyes. Olivia Stark. I knew that name sounded familiar when James first introduced you. You were behind Fincor's predictive algorithm, weren't you? I nodded, surprised he'd made the connection. Among other things. And now you own Quantum. He shook his head in amazement. May I ask why? There are easier ways to divorce a man than buying his company. The question caught me off guard. Why had I done this? Revenge would have been the simple answer, but the truth was more complicated. When I married James, I lost myself, I said finally. This isn't just about him. It's about remembering who I am. Theo nodded thoughtfully. And who are you planning to install as CEO? Richardson looks like he's one shock away from a heart attack. I haven't decided yet. I sipped my scotch, wincing at the burn. I need someone who understands the company but isn't afraid to make changes. Interesting. Theo's eyes twinkled. Well, if you're taking applications. Our conversation was interrupted as James stormed over, his face flushed with anger or alcohol, possibly both. Enjoying yourself, Theo, he snapped. Cozying up to the new boss already. Theo stood, straightening his jacket. Just catching up with an old friend. I'll leave you two to talk. He gave me a respectful nod before walking away. James took the vacated seat, leaning in close enough that I could smell the whiskey on his breath. What the hell do you think you're doing? I believe I made that clear during my announcement. This isn't a game, Olivia. You can't just waltz in and take over a company you know nothing about. I turned to face him fully. I reviewed Quantum's financials for 3 months before making my move. Your cash flow problems in the European division, the failed product launch you've been hiding from investors, the corners you've cut on security to boost short-term profits, I know more about this company's weaknesses than you think. His eyes widened slightly before narrowing again. So this is blackmail? What do you want? Money? Is that it? I laughed, the sound hollow even to my own ears. If I wanted money, James, I wouldn't have spent nearly $1 billion buying Quantum. I would have just divorced you and taken half. Then what? Revenge because I work too much? Because I'm not the perfect husband. Perfect. I repeated incredulously. You've been sleeping with your assistant for a year. You missed our anniversary to be with her. You lie to my face daily. And you have the audacity to ask if this is about you not being perfect. He had the grace to look momentarily ashamed before his anger resurfaced. So you're going to ruin everything I built because I made some mistakes? Destroy an entire company to punish me? I'm going to save the company from your mistakes, I corrected him. Starting with that merger. His face darkened. The merger is solid. We've been working on it for 18 months, yes, I heard. Did you also hear that Akira Tech is under investigation for corporate espionage? Or that their financials are built on sand? They're using you, James. They need Quantum's legitimacy and cash reserves to stay afloat. He stared at me, momentarily speechless. How could you possibly know that? Because unlike you, I did my due diligence. Ryan and I spent weeks investigating before I made my move. Ryan? James's voice rose. Ryan Skywalker? Your ex-partner? Is that what this is about? You're working with your ex. I sighed, suddenly exhausted by his predictability. Ryan is my business partner, nothing more. Though I'm hardly surprised that's where your mind went, given your own behavior. Across the room, I noticed Ellie signaling to me. The board wanted to meet, now. I have to go, I said, standing up. The board is waiting. James grabbed my wrist, his grip tight enough to hurt. This isn't over, Olivia. You have no idea what you've started. I looked pointedly at his hand until he released me. Actually, I do. That's the difference between us, James. I always knew exactly what I was doing. As I walked away, I felt his eyes burning into my back. For the first time, I wondered if I'd underestimated how dangerous James could be when cornered. The board had commandeered a private dining room adjacent to the main ballroom. 7 men and 2 women, all looking shell-shocked as I entered. Richardson sat at the head of the table, his usual commanding presence diminished. Mrs. Bourne, he began, then corrected himself. Ms. Stark. This is unprecedented. I understand this comes as a shock, I said, taking a seat. But I assure you, my intention is to strengthen Quantum, not dismantle it. By halting our most promising venture, demanded Victor Hayes, the aggressive VP of Operations who'd always been James's strongest ally. By preventing a catastrophic merger, I countered. Akira Tech is not what they appear to be. Their financials are manipulated, and they're currently under investigation in 3 countries. I slid a folder across the table, the dossier Ryan had compiled on Akira. Review this yourselves. If you still believe the merger is in Quantum's best interest after reading it, I'll reconsider my position. The board members exchanged glances as Richardson opened the folder. Even if what you say is true, said Patricia Winters, the only female board member I respected, why take such a drastic approach? Why not bring this information to us directly? Would you have listened? I asked simply. Or would James have convinced you I was just a jealous wife trying to undermine him? Patricia had no answer for that. Let's be clear, I continued. I now own controlling interest in Quantum. I can replace this entire board if I choose to. But that's not my goal. I want to work with those of you who truly care about this company's future. And your husband? Richardson asked, his voice grave. What role do you envision for him? The question I'd been wrestling with for months. Despite everything, some small part of me had hoped that when confronted with his failures, both professional and personal, James might show a glimmer of the man I'd fallen in love with. But his reaction tonight had extinguished that hope. That depends on him, I said finally. But his judgment has been compromised for some time. The merger is just one example. The meeting continued for another hour as I outlined my immediate plans for the company. By the time we emerged, the gala was winding down. Many guests had already left, no doubt eager to spread gossip about the night's dramatic events. I searched the thinning crowd for James but couldn't find him. Veronica was also nowhere to be seen. The realization sent a pang through my chest despite everything. He left about 20 minutes ago, said Theo, appearing at my side again. With his assistant. Of course he had. Even tonight, with everything crumbling around him, James had turned to Veronica for comfort. Are you okay? Theo asked, his voice gentle. I straightened my shoulders. I'm fine. This isn't about my marriage. It's about the company. But as I gathered my things to leave, I couldn't ignore the hollow feeling in my chest. I'd won the battle tonight, but the war was just beginning. And despite the power I now wielded, I'd never felt more alone. Outside, the cool San Francisco air cleared my head as I waited for my car. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You'll regret this. I promise." I stared at the message, a chill running down my spine that had nothing to do with the night air. I didn't need to ask who it was from. The game had changed, and so had the stakes. I'd taken James's company, his reputation, and his future. I'd humiliated him in front of everyone who mattered in his world. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that he would make me pay for it. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I checked into the Four Seasons under my maiden name, not ready to face the empty mansion James and I had shared. Sleep eluded me as I replayed the evening's events, questioning and reaffirming my decisions in an endless loop. At 5:30 a.m., I gave up on rest and called Ryan. "You're up early," he answered, sounding annoyingly alert. Ryan had always been a morning person, one of his many irritating qualities that somehow became endearing over time. "I never went to sleep," I admitted. "It's been intense. I saw the texts James sent you. Have you considered a restraining order?" I moved to the window, watching the city slowly come to life below. "Not yet. I need to see what his next move is." "Liv, he threatened you. He's angry. He'll calm down." Ryan sighed. "The James Bourne I researched isn't the type to calm down. He's the type to escalate." I knew Ryan was right, but acknowledging the threat meant accepting that my marriage was beyond salvation. Despite everything, some stubborn part of me wasn't ready for that. "I need you to send me everything we have on the executive team," I said, changing the subject. "I'm meeting with them individually today." "Already in your inbox." "And Liv?" "Be careful." After a quick shower and change into the spare clothes I'd packed, I headed to Quantum headquarters. The security guard did a double-take as I approached the executive elevator. "Mrs. Bourne? I didn't expect to see you here so early." "It's Miss Stark now, Carl," I corrected gently. "And I'll be here quite often from now on." Confusion crossed his weathered face. "I didn't get any memo about that." "You will. In the meantime, I need access to the executive floor." He hesitated, then nodded, swiping his card to call the elevator. "Have a good day, Ms. Stark." The executive floor was eerily quiet at 7 a.m. I made my way to James's corner office, steeling myself before pushing open the door. The space was immaculate as always. James was nothing if not meticulous. Awards lined the walls, photos of him with celebrities and politicians displayed prominently. I noticed with a pang that our wedding photo, once centered on his desk, was nowhere to be seen. I sat in his chair, running my fingers over the polished mahogany desk. How many decisions had he made from this spot? How many lies had he told? A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Theodore Keating stood in the doorway, looking unsurprised to find me there. "I thought I might find you here," he said. "The vultures are circling." "Meaning?" "Victor Hayes has called an emergency executive meeting for 8 a.m. I suspect they're planning how to push back against your takeover." I leaned back in James's chair. "Let them try." Theo entered, closing the door behind him. "There's something you should know before that meeting. Something about James that might explain his behavior." My heart rate quickened. "I'm listening." Theo sat across from me, his expression grave. 6 months ago, James approached me about some unusual financial transfers. Large sums moving through subsidiary accounts, eventually landing offshore. Money laundering. I asked, shocked despite everything I knew about James. "Not exactly. The money was being used to bribe officials in East Asia, specifically to fast-track approvals for the merger and bypass certain regulatory requirements." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. "Are you saying the merger is illegal?" "Parts of it, yes." James was cutting corners to make it happen faster. He was desperate for this deal to go through. "Why? What was so important about this specific merger?" Theo hesitated. That's where it gets complicated. The merger wasn't just about expanding Quantum's reach. James had a personal stake in Akira Tech through a shell company called Veronica Holdings. The name struck me like lightning. Veronica, his assistant. His lover, and apparently his business partner. They set up the shell company together 2 years ago. If the merger went through, their shares in Akira would have been worth millions. I felt physically ill. So this whole thing was a scam? James was using Quantum to enrich himself. And risking the entire company in the process. If the bribery had been discovered, the fallout would have been catastrophic. Does the board know? Theo shook his head. Only Richardson, and he agreed to keep it quiet if James found a way to unwind his position in Akira before the merger completed. My mind raced, connecting dots I should have seen months ago. James's late nights, his secretive phone calls, his insistence that I not attend certain company functions, it hadn't just been about Veronica. It had been about this scheme. Why are you telling me this? I asked Theo. Because I've spent 30 years building this company, and I won't watch it go down because of one man's greed. He leaned forward. And because I think you might be exactly what Quantum needs right now. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from Ellie, SOS. James is at your house with movers. He's clearing it out. I stood abruptly. I have to go. Can you handle the executive meeting? Of course. What should I tell them? Tell them their new boss is dealing with a domestic situation, but will be happy to address their concerns this afternoon. I grabbed my purse, already heading for the door. And Theo? Thank you. I broke several traffic laws racing to my home in Pacific Heights. As I screeched into the driveway, I saw a moving truck parked outside and men carrying furniture down the front steps. James stood in the doorway, directing the movers. He'd changed from his tuxedo into jeans and a casual shirt, looking for all the world like a normal husband on moving day. What the hell do you think you're doing? I demanded, storming up the steps. He turned to me with cold eyes. Taking what's mine. Since that seems to be the theme of the weekend. You can't just empty our house. Our house? He laughed bitterly. You mean the house I paid for? With the money I earned? While you played at being a corporate wife. His words stung, but I held my ground. We're still married, James. You can't legally take anything until we've settled our assets. Funny how you suddenly care about legal processes. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Did you think about legalities when you were sneaking around behind my back, plotting to steal my company? I didn't steal anything. I purchased shares on the open market. Using information you only had access to because you're my wife. No, I corrected him. Using information I had access to because I did my research. The same research you should have done before pushing that merger. Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, perhaps, that I knew about the merger's problems. I know everything, James, I continued, pressing my advantage. About Akira Tech's financial issues. About Veronica Holdings. About the bribes. He paled visibly. You're bluffing. Am I? Should we call the SEC and find out? The movers had stopped working, openly watching our confrontation. James noticed and forced a smile. Take a break, guys, he called to them. My wife and I need to talk privately. Once they'd moved away, he grabbed my arm and pulled me inside the house. The foyer was half empty, artwork missing from the walls, spaces where furniture had stood for years now bare. You have no idea what you've done, he hissed. The people I'm involved with in this deal don't take failure well. Are you threatening me, or admitting you're in over your head? I asked. I'm trying to make you understand the consequences of your actions. This isn't just about us anymore. For a moment, I saw genuine fear in his eyes, and my resolve wavered. What have you gotten yourself into, James? He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made my heart ache despite everything. It doesn't matter now. You've made sure the merger won't happen, which means I'm a dead man walking. Dramatically literal, or metaphorically speaking. Both, potentially. He laughed without humor. You think you've won, but you've just put both of us in danger. I wanted to dismiss his warnings as manipulation, but something in his expression gave me pause. Tell me the truth, James. All of it. Maybe I can help. He studied me for a long moment, as if seeing me clearly for the first time in years. Why would you help me after what I've done? It was a fair question, one I wasn't sure I had an answer to. Because despite everything, I don't want to see you destroyed. And because whatever mess you're in might affect Quantum, my company now. He sank onto the stairs, suddenly looking exhausted. It started 2 years ago. Veronica came to me with an opportunity. Her uncle was on Akira's board and knew they were looking for a Western partner. If I could make the merger happen, we'd both profit enormously. So you started sleeping with her for a business deal. The words tasted bitter in my mouth. He had the decency to look ashamed. It wasn't like that. At least, not at first. We were working closely together, spending late nights on the proposal. One thing led to another. Spare me the details, I cut in. What went wrong? Akira's financials. They weren't what they seemed. By the time I realized how bad things were, I was already committed, personally and professionally. And then I met some of their unofficial backers. Meaning people who don't appear on any corporate documents but expect returns on their investments. People who made it clear that failure wasn't an option. A chill ran down my spine. Are you saying Akira is backed by organized crime? Not exactly. More like very powerful people who operate in gray areas. People who've invested millions in this merger and expect it to happen. And the bribes? He winced. A necessary evil to keep things moving. The regulatory hurdles were significant. I paced the half-empty foyer, trying to process what he was telling me. So when I blocked the merger? You put a target on both our backs, he finished. These people don't care about corporate takeovers or marital problems. They care about their money. I stopped pacing, turning to face him. Why should I believe any of this? You've been lying to me for years. Because I have proof. He pulled out his phone, showing me a series of texts with unfamiliar numbers. The messages were vague but unmistakably threatening. These started coming in last night after your announcement. As I read through the messages, a new text appeared on his screen, meeting tonight. 8 p.m. Bring your wife. I looked up at James, seeing real fear in his eyes. What have you gotten us into? I don't know, he admitted. But I do know we need to figure it out together. Whatever's between us, this is bigger than our marriage or the company. For the first time in months, I believed he was telling me the truth. And that terrified me more than anything else. I spent the rest of the morning in a daze, torn between disbelief and mounting dread. James and I reached an uneasy truce. He agreed to stop emptying the house, and I agreed to meet with him and these mysterious investors that evening. You should go back to Quantum, he said as we stood in our half-dismantled living room. Act normal. Don't give anyone reason to think something's wrong. And you? I need to contact Veronica, see what she knows about these people. She was the connection initially. The mention of her name still stung, but I pushed past it. Do you trust her? He hesitated. I don't know anymore. But she's as deep in this as I am. I gathered my things, pausing at the door. James, if you're making this up to manipulate me. I'm not, he interrupted, his eyes serious. I've done a lot of things I'm not proud of, Olivia. But I would never put you in danger intentionally. I wanted to believe him. Despite everything, some part of me still wanted to see good in the man I'd married. But trust, once broken, isn't easily repaired. I'll see you tonight, I said, leaving before emotion could cloud my judgment further. Back at Quantum headquarters, I found the executive floor in chaos. My assistant, apparently I had one now, intercepted me as I stepped off the elevator. Miss Stark, thank goodness you're here. The executive team is waiting in the conference room, the press has been calling non-stop, and there's someone from the SEC asking to speak with you. I stopped short. The SEC? Already? They said it's regarding some irregularities with international transactions. My stomach dropped. If the Securities and Exchange Commission was already involved, James's situation was worse than I'd thought. Tell them I'll call back this afternoon. And let the executive team know I'll join them shortly. I ducked into my office and called Ryan. I need everything you can find on Akira Tech's investors, I said without preamble. Especially any with connections to grey market activities or organized crime. That's a tall order, Ryan replied. What's going on, Liv? I gave him a condensed version of James's revelations, half expecting him to tell me I was being naive. Instead, he whistled low. I knew something felt off about Akira, but this is next level. Give me a few hours to dig. I don't have a few hours. I'm meeting these people tonight. Then don't go, he said firmly. If what James is saying is true, these aren't people you want to mess with. I don't have a choice. They specifically asked for me. Then I'm coming with you. Absolutely not, I said. I'm not dragging you into this. You already did when you asked for my help taking over Quantum. We're partners, remember? His loyalty touched me, but I couldn't risk his safety. Just get me the information. I'll handle the meeting. After hanging up, I took a moment to compose myself before heading to the conference room. 8 executives sat around the table, conversation stopping abruptly as I entered. Good morning, I said, taking a seat at the head of the table, James's usual spot. I understand you have concerns. Victor Hayes leaned forward, his expression hostile. Concerns? You hijack our company, halt our biggest initiative, and you think we have any concerns? Victor, Theodore warned, but I held up a hand. It's all right, Theo. Mr. Hayes has every right to be upset. I met Victor's gaze steadily. But let me be clear, I didn't hijack anything. I purchased shares legally. And I halted the merger because it's fundamentally flawed. Based on what evidence? Victor demanded. I slid copies of Ryan's Akira dossier across the table. This, for starters. Akira Tech has been falsifying their financial reports for at least 3 years. Their technology patents are being challenged in court. And their leadership is under investigation in multiple countries. The executives flipped through the documents, expressions shifting from skepticism to concern. If this is true, said Patricia Winters, why didn't our due diligence team catch it? I chose my words carefully, not ready to expose James's corruption fully. That's a question worth investigating. But right now, our priority is damage control. For the next 2 hours, we discuss strategies for unwinding from the merger without triggering legal repercussions or market panic. By the time the meeting ended, even Victor seemed grudgingly accepting of my leadership. As the room cleared, Theo lingered behind. You didn't mention the bribes or James's personal stake. Not yet, I admitted. I need to understand the full picture first. Be careful, Olivia. There are layers to this situation you might not be seeing. His warning echoed in my mind as I spent the afternoon fielding calls from board members, investors, and reporters. Everyone wanted to know the same things. Why had I taken over Quantum? What were my plans? Where was James? By 7 p.m., I was exhausted and no closer to understanding the danger James had warned about. Ryan had sent over preliminary findings on Akira's investors, a complex web of shell companies and holding firms that ultimately traced back to several prominent figures in East Asian politics and business. Nothing overtly criminal, Ryan noted in his email. But several red flags regarding connections to state-sponsored industrial espionage. As I prepared to leave for the meeting, my office door opened without a knock. James stood there, looking haggard in a rumpled suit. It's time, he said simply. Did you reach Veronica? I asked, gathering my things. His expression darkened. No. She's not answering my calls or texts. Her apartment is empty. She ran? Looks that way. He rubbed his face tiredly. Can't say I blame her. We took his car, driving in tense silence to a nondescript building in the industrial district south of Market Street. The area was deserted at this hour, most businesses closed for the night. Who exactly are we meeting? I asked as he parked in an empty lot. I only know them as Mr. Park and Ms. Chen. They represent the primary investors behind Akira's expansion. And they're dangerous because? James turned to face me, his expression grave. Because they've invested over $200 million in a merger that you just publicly torpedoed. And because they don't strike me as people who accept failure. A chill ran down my spine. Maybe we should reconsider this meeting. Too late. He nodded toward the rearview mirror, where a black SUV had pulled in behind us, blocking our exit. They're here. Two men in dark suits emerged from the SUV and approached our car. James squeezed my hand, a gesture so familiar it made my heart ache despite everything. Let me do the talking, he said. And whatever happens, remember that these people value face above all else. Don't show fear. The men escorted us into the building and up a freight elevator to a converted loft space. The interior was surprisingly elegant, for minimalist furniture, expensive art on the walls, a bar stocked with premium liquor. A woman in her 50s sat on a leather sofa, her posture perfect, her expression unreadable. Beside her stood a younger man in a tailored suit, scrolling through a tablet. Mr. Bourne, the woman said, her accent slight but noticeable. And Mrs. Bourne. Or should I say, Miss Stark? Please, sit. We took seats across from them. James maintained a confident facade, but I could feel the tension radiating from him. Ms. Chen, Mr. Park, he greeted them. Thank you for meeting with us. I must admit, we were surprised by the developments at your gala, Ms. Chen said, her voice cool. It's not often a man's wife becomes his boss overnight. Business and marriage are separate matters, I replied, matching her tone. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Are they? In my experience, they are deeply intertwined. Especially in situations like yours. Mr. Park set down his tablet. Let's not waste time with pleasantries. We have invested considerable resources in the Quantum Akira merger. Resources we expect to see returns on. The merger had problems, I said carefully. Akira's financials? Are not your concern, Ms. Chen interrupted. Your concern is fulfilling the commitments made by Quantum Innovations. Commitments made without proper disclosure or board approval, I countered. Commitments that could destroy Quantum if fulfilled. James placed a warning hand on my arm, but I shook it off. I hadn't come this far to be intimidated. Ms. Chen's smile didn't reach her eyes. Miss Stark, you are new to this situation, so perhaps you don't understand the stakes. We don't care about Quantum's long-term viability. We care about our investment. An investment predicated on fraud, I said bluntly. The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees. Mr. Park set his tablet down with deliberate care. Fraud is a serious accusation, he said softly. One that could have repercussions. What my wife means, James interjected, is that there appear to be discrepancies in the information provided. Discrepancies we can work through together. Ms. Chen studied me for a long moment. Your husband understands the art of negotiation, Ms. Stark. Perhaps you should follow his lead. My husband also understands the art of deception, I replied. Which is why we're in this situation to begin with. James shot me a warning look, but I pressed on. Let me be clear, I will not approve a merger that endangers my company based on falsified data and backroom deals. If that's a problem for you, then we have nothing further to discuss. Ms. Chen's expression hardened. You misunderstand your position. This is not a negotiation. This is a courtesy meeting to inform you of expectations. And if those expectations aren't met? I challenged. Mr. Park smiled thinly. Then we would be forced to protect our investment through other channels. Channels that might prove uncomfortable for you both. The threat hung in the air, unmistakable despite its vagueness. Are you threatening us? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Not at all, Ms. Chen replied smoothly. Merely outlining consequences. Business is business, after all. She stood, signaling the end of the meeting. You have 48 hours to reconsider your position on the merger, Ms. Stark. After that, we will take appropriate action to secure our interests. As we were escorted back to our car, James remained silent, his face pale in the dim light. Well, that went well, I said once we were alone, aiming for sarcasm but hearing the tremor in my voice. You shouldn't have antagonized them, he said quietly. These people don't make idle threats. What exactly are they going to do, James? Kill us over a failed merger? He started the car, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Not kill. Destroy. There are worse things than death, Olivia. Like what? Like watching everything you've built crumble. Like having your reputation shredded so thoroughly you can never rebuild it. Like spending the rest of your life looking over your shoulder. The gravity of his words sank in as we drove through the empty streets. What have you gotten us into? I whispered. I thought I was securing my future, he said, his voice hollow. Our future. I never meant for it to go this far. And Veronica? Was she part of securing our future too? He winced. That was a mistake. A stupid, selfish mistake. One of many, I noted bitterly. We lapsed into silence again until he pulled up in front of the Four Seasons. You shouldn't go home tonight, he said. Not alone. I'm not going home with you, if that's what you're suggesting. I'm not. I'm saying you should stay here, where there's security. He hesitated. I'll find somewhere else to go. As I reached for the door handle, he caught my arm. Olivia. I'm sorry. For everything. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know that. I studied his face, searching for the man I'd fallen in love with. In the dim light of the car, I could almost see him, the James who had once looked at me like I was his whole world. I don't know if I can ever forgive you, I said honestly. But right now, forgiveness is the least of our problems. He nodded, understanding. Get some rest. I'll call you in the morning, and we'll figure out our next move. As I watched his car pull away, I felt utterly alone. I'd spent months planning my takeover of Quantum, imagining the satisfaction of reclaiming my power. Now that victory felt hollow, overshadowed by threats I hadn't anticipated and complications I couldn't have imagined. In my hotel room, I checked my phone to find a message from Ryan, call me ASAP. Found something big about Akira. I dialed his number, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried again with the same result. A text came through from an unknown number, your friend is persistent. Perhaps you should advise him to mind his own business. My blood ran cold. I tried Ryan's number again, panic rising when it remained unanswered. Another text, 48 hours, Ms. Stark. Not a minute more. I sank onto the bed, the phone slipping from my trembling fingers. The game had changed. This wasn't about my marriage anymore, or even about Quantum. This was about survival. And for the first time since I'd begun this journey, I had no idea what to do next. I didn't sleep. How could I? Ryan wasn't answering his phone, James was God knows where, and somewhere in San Francisco, powerful people were plotting against me. By dawn, I'd made a decision I wouldn't be intimidated. My first call was to Ellie. I need everything you can find on Ms. Chen and Mr. Park, connected to Akira Tech. And I need security, for me and for Ryan Skywalker. Ryan? What's happened? I think they've done something to him. He found information about Akira, and now he's not answering his phone. Ellie's voice sharpened. I'm calling the police. No, I said quickly. Not yet. These people have connections. We need to be careful. My next call was to Theo, the only executive I truly trusted. I need your help, I told him. And it can't go beyond us. An hour later, we met in a coffee shop far from Quantum headquarters. I told him everything, the threats, Ryan's disappearance, the 48-hour ultimatum. This is beyond corporate rivalry, Theo said gravely. These people are dangerous. I know. But I can't give in to them. What's your plan? I leaned forward. I think there's more to this merger than money laundering or bribes. Ryan found something significant before he disappeared. I need to know what it was. And how do we find that out? By going to the source. I showed him my phone, a text from James with an address. James says he's found Veronica. She's hiding at her sister's apartment in Oakland. Theo looked skeptical. Can you trust him? I don't know. But right now, he's the only connection I have to these people. The drive to Oakland was tense. James met us outside a modest apartment complex, looking like he hadn't slept either. She's terrified, he warned. Says they've been watching her for weeks. Veronica barely resembled the confident assistant I'd glimpsed at company functions. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her hands shaking as she clutched a mug of coffee. I never wanted this, she said, avoiding my gaze. It was supposed to be a simple business arrangement. Tell me about Chen and Park, I said, cutting to the chase. They're not who they claim to be, she whispered. They don't work for Akira, they control it. The company is just a front. A front for what? Technology theft. Industrial espionage. She looked up, fear evident in her eyes. The merger isn't about business expansion. It's about gaining access to quantum security protocols and client database. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. They want to steal our technology. And your client information. Quantum handles cybersecurity for half the Fortune 500. With that access, they could infiltrate any of those companies. James paled. That's what Ryan discovered, isn't it? That's why they went after him. My phone rang, an unknown number. I answered cautiously. Ms. Stark. Ms. Chen's voice was cool as ever. I believe we have something of yours. My heart stopped. If you've hurt him. Mr. Skywalker is unharmed. For now. His continued well-being depends on your cooperation. I want proof he's alive. A pause, then Ryan's voice came through, Liv, don't give them what they want. This goes beyond quantum. His voice cut off abruptly. Ms. Chen returned. 40 hours remaining, Ms. Stark. Approve the merger, or your friend suffers the consequences. The call ended. I looked at the others, determination hardening within me. We need to go to the authorities, Theo insisted. Not yet, I said. If we do, Ryan is dead. We need leverage. James leaned forward. I might have something. When I set up the shell company with Veronica, I kept records of all my interactions with Chen and Park. Recordings, emails, everything. Where are these records? I asked. In a secure server. I was protecting myself in case things went south. For the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope. That's our leverage. It's not enough, Veronica interjected. They'll kill us all if they think we're threatening them. Not if we expose them first, I countered. Not if we make the information public in a way they can't contain. A plan began forming in my mind, dangerous, possibly foolish, but our only option. I turned to James, seeing him with new eyes. Not as my husband or my enemy, but as an ally in this fight. I need you to trust me, I said. All of you. Because what I'm about to propose is either going to save us or destroy us completely. James met my gaze, something like the old connection flickering between us. I'm in. Whatever it takes. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt the balance of power shifting. We were no longer just reacting, we were fighting back. And I was done being afraid. The next 24 hours were a blur of activity. James retrieved his evidence. Theo gathered trusted executives. Ellie prepared legal documents. And I crafted the most important presentation of my life. Our plan was simple but dangerous, use Chen and Park's own tactics against them. Create a dead man switch, information set to release automatically if anything happened to any of us. Make ourselves too dangerous to touch. As the deadline approached, I sent a message to Ms. Chen, I've reconsidered your offer. Let's meet to discuss terms. The response came quickly, the same location. 8 p.m. Bring the merger approval documents. And Ryan, I insisted. Or no deal. Of course, came the reply. We are, after all, reasonable people. I knew they were anything but reasonable. But for our plan to work, I needed to face them one more time. As James and I prepared to leave for the meeting, he stopped me with a gentle hand on my arm. Olivia, he said softly. If this goes wrong. It won't, I assured him, with more confidence than I felt. But if it does. His eyes held mine. I need you to know that despite everything, loving you was the one thing in my life I never regretted. The words pierced through the armor I'd built around my heart. James! You don't have to say anything, he interrupted. I don't deserve forgiveness. I just needed you to know. As we drove to meet our fate, I realized that whatever happened tonight, nothing would ever be the same again. My marriage, my company, my life, everything had been transformed by the choices we'd made. But for the first time in years, I felt fully alive. Fully myself. And I was ready to fight for everything that mattered. The warehouse looked more menacing at night, shadows stretching across the empty parking lot as James and I arrived. 2 black SUVs were already there, security personnel standing at attention. Ready? James asked, his hand finding mine in the darkness. I nodded, clutching my laptop bag containing not merger documents, but our insurance policy. Let's finish this. Inside, Ms. Chen and Mr. Park waited with the same cold composure as before. Ryan sat in a chair nearby, a bruise darkening his left cheek but otherwise appearing unharmed. Our eyes met briefly, his filled with warning, mine with reassurance. Miss Stark, Chen greeted me. I'm pleased you've reconsidered our arrangement. I'm a businesswoman, I replied smoothly. I recognize when I'm outmatched. Park smiled thinly. A wise assessment. You have the documents. First, Ryan walks out of here. After we verify the documents, Chen countered. I opened my laptop, turning it to face them. The merger approval, signed by me as majority shareholder, and a statement from the board supporting the decision. Park examined the documents, nodding with satisfaction. Everything appears to be in order. Then we're done here, I said. Release Ryan, and we'll be on our way. Chen's smile didn't reach her eyes. Not quite yet. There's the matter of your interference. Actions have consequences, Ms. Stark. My heart raced, but I kept my expression neutral. What consequences did you have in mind? Your ownership of Quantum creates complications. We'll need you to transfer your shares to a holding company of our choosing. And there it was, their true objective. Not just the merger, but control of Quantum itself. That wasn't our agreement, I said carefully. The agreement has evolved, Park replied. Unless you'd prefer Mr. Skywalker to suffer further consequences. I glanced at Ryan, then at James, giving him the signal we'd arranged. He subtly pressed a button on his phone, activating our plan. Before I agree to anything else, I said, turning back to Chen and Park, I think you should know that this conversation is being live-streamed to the FBI, SEC, and several news outlets. Their composure cracked for the first time. You're bluffing, Park snapped. Am I? I turned my laptop around, showing them the active stream, and the viewers rapidly climbing into the thousands. Your faces, names, and crimes are now public record. Including your real identities as agents of foreign intelligence. Chen's eyes widened in genuine shock. How did you? Ryan discovered who you really are before you took him. And James kept records of every interaction with you, insurance for himself that's now insurance for all of us. One of their security men whispered urgently in Park's ear. His face darkened. There are police vehicles approaching. That would be the FBI, I said calmly. They've been waiting for my signal. Chen's composure shattered completely. You fool. Do you have any idea what you've done? Stopped you from using my company to spy on American corporations? Yes, I'm aware. Chaos erupted as sirens wailed outside. Park's men drew weapons, but James stepped forward. It's over, he said firmly. The information is already out there. Killing us won't change that. For a terrible moment, I thought they might shoot us anyway. Then Chen gave a curt nod, and the weapons lowered. This isn't finished, she hissed as FBI agents flooded the room. Actually, I replied, watching them being handcuffed, I think it is. The next hours passed in a blur of statements, evidence processing, and medical checks for Ryan. By dawn, we were exhausted but free, Chen and Park in custody, their network exposed, the threat neutralized. As we stood outside FBI headquarters, Ryan hugged me tightly. You crazy, brilliant woman. You could have been killed. So could you, I reminded him. Are you okay? Nothing some ice and sleep won't fix. He glanced at James, who stood awkwardly nearby. What about you two? I looked at my husband, the man who had betrayed me, then helped save me. The man I had loved, hated, and now, what? We have a lot to figure out, I said honestly. Ryan nodded understandingly. I'll give you some space. Call me tomorrow. As he walked away, James and I faced each other in the pale morning light. What happens now? He asked quietly. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past and the uncertainty of the future. Now we rebuild. The company, our lives, everything. Together. The hope in his voice was painful to hear. I don't know, James. You broke something fundamental between us. That doesn't heal overnight. He nodded, accepting this truth. I understand. But I want you to know I'll spend every day trying to be worthy of a second chance, whether you give it to me or not. For the first time in months, I saw the man I'd married, flawed, human, but genuine. Not the power-hungry executive or the desperate conspirator. Just James. One day at a time, I said finally. That's all I can offer right now. He smiled sadly. It's more than I deserve. As the sun rose over San Francisco, I felt something I hadn't expected, not forgiveness, not yet, but possibility. The possibility of healing, of growth, of finding my way forward, with or without James. I had reclaimed my power, saved my company, and remembered who I truly was. Whatever came next, I would face it as Olivia Stark, stronger, wiser, and finally, completely myself again. 6 months later, I stood at the window of my office, my real office, not James's, looking out at the San Francisco skyline. Quantum innovations had not just survived the scandal, it had emerged stronger. The press had dubbed it the quantum conspiracy, a tale of corporate espionage, international intrigue, and one woman's fight to save her company. For weeks, we'd been front-page news, our stock initially plummeting before rebounding to record highs once the full story emerged. Chen and Park, revealed as foreign intelligence operatives using Akira Tech as a front, were facing federal charges. Their network had been dismantled, their assets frozen. The merger was dead, but quantum was very much alive. A knock at my door pulled me from my thoughts. Theo entered, carrying 2 cups of coffee. Board meeting in 20 minutes, he reminded me, setting a cup on my desk. The quarterly results are impressive. I smiled, taking the coffee gratefully. 3 consecutive quarters of growth. Not bad for a company that was nearly destroyed. All thanks to you. Theo's eyes crinkled warmly. You know, when you first took over, I thought you were just seeking revenge on James. I've never been happier to be wrong. It started that way, I admitted. But somewhere along the line, it became about something more. My phone buzzed with a text from Ryan, dinner still on for tonight? Bringing the contracts for the Singapore expansion. I smiled, typing back a quick confirmation. Ryan had become my right hand in rebuilding quantum, his financial expertise complementing my strategic vision perfectly. Our partnership was stronger than ever, strictly professional, but deeply valued. Speaking of James, Theo said carefully, have you made a decision about his proposal? The question I'd been wrestling with for weeks. After everything that had happened, James had stepped down from his executive role, accepting responsibility for his part in the conspiracy. But recently, he'd approached the board with a new security software concept, one that had genuine merit. I'm meeting him for lunch to discuss it, I said. The technology is solid. The question is whether quantum should be associated with him again. And whether you should, Theo added gently. That was the more complicated question. James and I had spent the past 6 months in a strange limbo, not together, not fully apart. Weekly therapy sessions, both individual and couples. Painful conversations about trust, betrayal, and forgiveness. Slow, cautious steps toward something. Not the marriage we had before, but perhaps something more honest. One day at a time, I said, echoing the words I'd told James that morning outside the FBI building. The board meeting went smoothly, our new transparency policies making the once contentious gatherings almost pleasant. Afterward, I headed to the restaurant where James was waiting. He stood as I approached, looking better than he had in months. The haunted look that had followed him since the arrest of Chen and Park had finally faded. "You look beautiful," he said as I sat down. "Thank you." I studied him, noting the changes. He'd lost the slick corporate veneer, his designer suit replaced with something more casual, his expression more open. "You look well." "I feel well. The therapy is helping." He smiled slightly. "Dr. Michael says I'm making progress on my pathological need for external validation." I laughed despite myself. "She's not wrong." "No, she's not." His expression turned serious. "Olivia, before we discuss the proposal, I want you to know something. Whatever you decide about the software, about us, I'm grateful for these months. For the chance to really see myself, and to really see you." The sincerity in his voice touched me. "I'm grateful too, James. It hasn't been easy, but it's been clarifying." "So," he said, opening a folder between us, "about the security protocol." We spent the next hour discussing his proposal, a sophisticated encryption system that could protect Quantum's clients from exactly the kind of attack Chen and Park had planned. It was brilliant work, showing a depth of understanding I'd never given him credit for. "The board will approve it," I said finally. "But you'll work as a contractor, not an executive. At least for now." Relief washed over his face. "That's more than fair." "Thank you." As we finished lunch, an awkward silence fell between us. 6 months of therapy had helped us communicate better, but some moments still felt fragile. "There's something else," James said finally. "I've been offered a position with a security firm in New York. It's a good opportunity." My heart stuttered unexpectedly. "You're leaving San Francisco?" "I'm considering it." His eyes met mine. "Unless there's a reason for me to stay." The question hung between us, unspoken but clear. After everything we'd been through, was there still an us worth fighting for? I thought about the past year, the betrayal, the takeover, the danger, and the healing. I thought about the man James had been, the man he was trying to become, and the woman I now was. Stronger, more confident, unwilling to settle for less than I deserved. "I can't answer that today," I said honestly. "But I'm not ready to say goodbye either." A small smile touched his lips. "What are you ready for?" I considered the question carefully. "Dinner. Tomorrow night. My place. We can talk about what comes next." "I'd like that." As we parted outside the restaurant, he hesitated, then leaned in to kiss my cheek, a gesture both familiar and new. "One day at a time," he whispered. "One day at a time," I agreed. That evening, I hosted a small gathering at my new apartment. Ryan, Ellie, Theo, and a few other trusted colleagues who had become friends through our shared ordeal. As we celebrated Quantum's latest success, I found myself filled with a contentment I hadn't expected to feel again. "A toast," Ryan proposed, raising his glass. "To Olivia Stark, who reminded us all what real leadership looks like." "And to new beginnings," Ellie added. "To new beginnings," I echoed, thinking of tomorrow's dinner with James, of Quantum's bright future, of the life I was building on my own terms. Later, as my guests departed, Ryan lingered behind. "You seem happy," he observed. "Genuinely happy." "I am," I realized. "Not because everything's perfect, but because I'm finally living authentically." "And James?" he asked carefully. I smiled, thinking of the complex journey we'd traveled. "That's still being written. But whatever happens, I know who I am now. I won't lose myself again." After Ryan left, I stood on my balcony, watching the city lights shimmer below. A year ago, I had been a shadow of myself, lost in a marriage that diminished me, disconnected from my own power. Now I stood at the helm of a thriving company, surrounded by genuine relationships, facing the future with confidence. The path forward with James remained uncertain. Perhaps we would find our way back to each other, building something new from the ashes of what we'd destroyed. Perhaps we would ultimately part ways, taking the lessons we'd learned into separate futures. Either way, I was at peace with the journey. My phone buzzed with a text from James, looking forward to tomorrow. "Thank you for not giving up on me." I typed back, "Thank you for not giving up on yourself." As I looked out at the city that had witnessed my fall and rise, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. For the challenges that had forced me to grow. For the betrayals that had led me back to myself. For the courage I'd found when I needed it most. I had refused to be relegated to table 7 in my own life. I had claimed my place at the head of the table, in my company, in my relationships, in my heart. And whatever the future held, I would never give up that seat again. The end. Wow, what a journey! I hope you enjoyed this story of power, betrayal, and redemption. Did you expect that ending? Do you think Olivia and James will find their way back to each other, or are they better off apart? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you loved this story, please hit that subscribe button for more emotional rollercoasters just like this one. Where are you watching from? I'd love to know. Until next time, beautiful people. Red Heart Hash.